What else am I missing? Oh, and the birds.
Oh yeah, birds. You're gonna need some birds.
If you don't eat meat and you are oblivious to where your meat comes from
And don't want to know.
and don't want to know because you want to walk around going la 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 la, it comes from the store, don't watch this video. And certainly don't leave a comment. Hey guys, welcome to TCR. Sid here. Thanks for clicking on the video. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Why do we do our own processing? And why should you be doing yours? If you've been following our channel for any length of time, you know that we have raised, bred, and processed and cooked many different kinds of animals on our little farm. And we take great pride in being as sustainable and as prepared as we can. Caring about the way the animals are raised and treated was a huge reason as to why we got into doing this in the first place, and really wanting to know what we were putting in our bodies. In the last 2 years, there's been a huge uptick in people wanting to be more sustainable, being more interested in growing their own food, whether it be just vegetables or vegetables and animals. People are really wanting to explore that, kind of, in a way, get back to our roots a little bit. And I think that's fantastic. But a lot of people are also very critical of the fact that we do a lot of our own processing here. Now, for some people, I've heard the comment oftentimes, I could raise my own meat, but there's no way I could process it myself. I don't think that I have it in me. I don't think I could be in the right mindset. It's not for me, whatever. And that's fine. For a lot of people, actually being the one to dispatch the animal isn't something that they're comfortable with. They're okay with maybe being around it or seeing it done in some situations, but they're not okay with doing it themselves. And that's okay. It's not for everybody. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, that some people can't see themselves doing it. The ones obviously that can't see themselves doing it, don't want you doing it either, but are still happy to go to a chain burger joint and get a burger. Those people are a little bit hypocritical. Those people are very disconnected from where their food comes from and don't understand the process that has to happen in order for that meat to end up on your plate. Now, I personally think if you are raising any livestock animals yourself, that you need to be comfortable with dispatching them. Sometimes it's for the reason of illness or injury. If you have a predator attack and you have an injured animal that there is no saving, it's clearly suffering, you need to be able to dispatch it right then and there and quickly so that the animal does not suffer. You know, the animals that you are raising, that you are taking charge of, they're relying on you for that. You're in essence responsible for their well-being. And if their well-being is somehow damaged or in jeopardy due to some outside force, like I said, a predator or an illness that is not going to be something that they can overcome with, some simple fixes, then you have to look at, hey, these are situations that are going to come up when I have farm animals. Am I comfortable with pulling the trigger, grabbing the knife, wringing the neck, whatever the situation is? And sometimes the answer to that is no. And in which case, if you're in a situation with yourself, by yourself, where or no one else in your household is comfortable doing it, you have to think about, gee, is this something I really should be entering into? Because you don't want to be in a situation where your animal may potentially suffer. The skills that you need to be able to dispatch an animal, dress the animal out, and do it in a safe way for your own consumption, I think is a good skill and good knowledge to have. I'm thrilled with the fact that the three of us in this house know how to do that. Now, Frankie, obviously, our daughter, is not as hands-on yet in some areas as she might become when she's older. She's pretty comfortable with the poultry. She's seen the pigs go. She's seen the lambs go a few times, but she's not at the point yet where, we're having her do that process from start to finish. She's not really involved in that. She has seen it, she's aware of it, but she's not really involved in that. The chicken processing, quail processing, turkey processing, basically any poultry, ducks, she has helped with pretty much every aspect of it now. She has done at least once. And she understands what the different parts are, what the different organs are, what you need to keep, what you need to get rid of, what's, considered unsafe. She understands all of that. And I think for somebody her age, that's fantastic that she has that knowledge, because if she is ever in a situation where food is scarce and you have to know how to dress out an animal, that's a good skill to have. Knowing where that bile sac is, making sure that you're not breaking it and tainting your meat, understanding that there are some parts that are inside the organs that you can eat, but you don't really want to eat what's in the intestines, that certain things that, understanding of that just basic biology, a lot of people don't have anymore. And it's evident, I think, in society in a lot of ways nowadays, especially when we get comments like, well, why don't you just buy your meat at the grocery store? We do sell our poultry. It's important to know the safe handling of it from the beginning to the end. From the time you get that baby chick to the time that you're processing out and putting it in a seal wrap bag and sticking it in the freezer. All of that process is important to know. Getting back to some of these basic skills and being able to do it yourself, even if it's not something that you want to do long term. I know a lot of people that raise larger animals all year and they have a butcher come out and take care of it for them. And there is no shame in that. I think it's important to be able to do it, to be able to go through the steps, to know how to break down the animal, to know what parts are what of the meat when it's broken down, to educate yourself about it. If you're not the type that can do it firsthand, if you don't have the stomach for it, so to speak, that's okay. It's not for everybody. I think the thing to remember is that if you do it a couple of times to where you feel relatively comfortable with the process, and then from then on you're like, it's not really my jam, it's not something that I want to be doing, I'd rather have the butcher come out and take care of that part for me, or I'd rather have my buddy come out and take care of it for me and either pay him a little bit or give him a portion of the meat. Work a deal, figure it out. If you're a homesteader, that's definitely an option. But you have to think of, when you're homesteading too, if you are just raising meat for your own consumption, what does that do to your cost for your meat per pound? If you're hiring a butcher to come out, prices are going up everywhere. And that's not just the cost of the feed that you're using to raise the animal. But that being said, you're still going to be raising your cost on your meat considerably if you're having a butcher come out, not just to do the dispatch, but to also break down all the cuts into retail cuts. If you're doing a pig, to make the sausage, to do the hams, a lot of them won't even do that anymore because it's time consuming for them to do it. It takes time and space to cure the hams and to cure the belly and to grind up all the meat and then to mix the seasonings and make the sausage. And then are you doing casings? Are you doing bulk sausage? There's things like that just kind of basic understanding of is a good thing to have, and to be able to know how to do all of that, even if you don't choose to do it every time. We've had the butcher, who happens to also be our neighbor, come over and do our pigs a couple of times out of all the pigs we've done, because different reasons. One time Mike was super slammed at work. That was right when COVID hit, and he was basically working by himself, and he just didn't have the time to do it. And so we had him come out, break it down. I still ended up making the sausage and doing that stuff ourselves. But the other things, like the main breakdown and dispatch, he was able to take care of for us. Now, yes, that raised our cost, but sometimes you're in a jam and you got to do it. It's like, how much is it going to cost me to keep feeding this pig for a few more months versus how much is it going to cost me to just go ahead and pay the butcher to do the dispatch and break it down into basic cuts? You got to weigh your pros and cons. Some people are intimidated to try it for the first time, and I always recommend starting with something small, starting with a chicken or a quail or something that's not cute and furry. A lot of people will say, oh, start with a rabbit. A lot of people have a hard time with that because they equate rabbits with pets, and they're fluffy, and some people have a hard time making that their first. I think a much easier transition is starting with a smaller bird and kind of working your way up, because the basic anatomy is the same on a lot of these animals, and you're going to have the same kind of experience as far as the basic, once you get down the basic dispatch part, which is the hurdle for most people. But getting that point, it's a little easier, I think, for most people to start with a smaller bird. And that's okay. There's no rule that says you have to go big or go home. You don't have to start with a steer. You know, you don't have to start with something like that. You can definitely start with something small. And I recommend that too. If you're new to this whole idea of wanting to raise your own meat, start with smaller animals. Start with quail. Start with small chickens. Like, start with something like that that you feel would be a little bit more comfortable with you, for you to be able to process and break down, that you're less likely to get attached to if you feel that that might be an issue for you. There is tons of information, whether it be our YouTube channel. We've shown many different processes and breaking down of the meat, and why and how we do things certain ways. There's tons of information out there nowadays, so that you, even if you're not able to find somebody that is near you that can help walk you through it or teach you hands-on, there is enough information on the web, and there's great books on it as well. If that's always a good thing. We always recommend too, if you're learning something, to have something in hard copy, whether you're printing it out or getting a hard copy book, so that you have it in case the grid were to go down, or in case you don't have access to the internet or power or whatever, you still have a reference that way. But yes, I am 100% for people at least giving it a try and learning how to process their own meat if they're going to eat meat. I've talked about this many times before. I eat pretty limited quantities of meat, even of what we raise, but I feel comfortable in the fact that I know how to process it, how to break it down. I know how to dispatch an animal. I can't even count how many I have done at this point. And I think it's a really good skill and thing to be able to pass down to my daughter. Mike and I both feel that way. So that's why we've chosen to do it. We feel like when you're raising the animal, there is a certain amount of respect there and a certain amount owed to it, that if you're able to do it yourself, it's part of it. It's part of the process. And on the other side of that, if you're looking at, the economic side of it, doing it yourself is cheaper, because you're not paying someone to do it. It's going to cost you time, and you may make some mistakes in the beginning, and you have to be a little bit patient with yourself and grant yourself a little bit of forgiveness in the beginning, because it doesn't always go smoothly in the beginning, and it doesn't always happen the way you want it to. It does take some practice for people, especially those that, grew up in the city, didn't grow up hunting, didn't grow up fishing, that have no experience with that. It can be a little bit daunting. But I think it's important to get in there and get your hands dirty, literally, and give yourself the gift of having those little extra sets of skills for supplying yourself with that meat if you're raising it. There's no shame in having a butcher do it or having a friend help. But I do feel like there is a slightly greater sense of pride. And those of you that have experienced this know what I'm talking about. When you raise it and process it and break it down yourself, there's a different connection with where your food is coming from that you just can't duplicate going to the store or having someone provide it to you. And I think that just adds an extra layer of being grateful and knowing the sacrifice and not wasting anything, because you understand the hard work that went into it. You understand the sacrifice that went into it. And it gives you a little firmer understanding and a deeper connection, kind of roots you in the essence of where that sustenance is coming from. So I hope that explains it for you guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you get the notifications.